Imagine losing your gear to a devastating fire right in the middle of a grueling road trip. Do you fold or do you fight? Welcome to Pigskin Dispatch's Gridiron celebration of the 1936 football season. Today, football historian Timothy P. Brown joins us to discuss a football archaeology article he wrote, When the Gophers Played with Fire. We'll discover how the 1936 Minnesota Golden Gophers played hard and overcame a fiery disaster to keep their season alive. Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And welcome to another Tuesday as we are celebrating the year of 1936. And we have Tim Brown joining us today to talk about a component of 1936 to fit into our timeline. Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darren. Good to see you once again and look forward to chatting. I do want to, instead of starting out with a dad joke, I want to do a quiz, and I want to see how smart you are. So finish.
Well, everybody already knows I'm not very smart. So
well, let's see just how smart or not smart.
Okay.
So finish this sentence. Where there's smoke, there's
fire.
You got it.
Wow.
You're good at this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so this one is Minnesota. In 1936, they played Washington at Washington. So that was, for them, that may have been their first time, crossing the Rockies or, going to the coast. They went back there in like 41 as well. But anyway, so, it was a big deal for them. And their coach at the time was Bernie Bierman, who had played at Montana and coached at Montana before he went to like Tulane, and then he ended up at Minnesota where he had his greatest success. But anyway, so what they ended up doing was they took the train, with Pullman cars, so sleeping cars, from Minneapolis out to Missoula, Montana, which is where the University of Montana is. And I think Bernie wanted to meet up with some people, and they practiced there and stuff like that. So anyways, they were staying overnight. So they stay at this Florence Hotel, which was a 175 room hotel. So pretty decent size hotel. So that's kind of a boring story until 4 o'clock in the morning rolls around. And one of the newspaper reporters who's accompanying the team, awakens to smoke. And initially he thinks it's a forest fire, but realizes, no, this is, he like opens his door, there's smoke in the hallway. So he runs downstairs. At the time, buildings didn't have alarm systems, right? So he ran downstairs, alerted the front desk, and they're calling, using the switchboard to call the rooms. The bellboys running through the floors, knocking on doors, waking people up. And so they end up in a situation where they kind of do roll call. The team does roll call out in front of the hotel, and they're missing two guys. Mm. They're both ends. And so the end coach runs back into the burning building to try to rescue them. And the environment was too terrible. He ends up backing out. But luckily, these two guys had escaped like through the back end of the hotel on some fire escape. So they were safe. And in fact, pretty much everybody was safe. There were some people affected by smoke, but nothing, substantial. But the building burned down completely. So all these guys lost, whatever personal belongings. If they didn't grab it on the way out, they lost everything. A lot of them didn't have shoes. Their books. They didn't have laptops at the time, so they didn't lose those. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of guys, they lost their watches, they lost jewelry, and including charms from their previous national championships. So, different awards that they'd received. So pretty much everything was gone. And so they end up sleeping the night in the Pullman cars, and they eventually arrive in Washington. And during the game, somebody broke into their locker room and stole other stuff that they, so if you didn't lose in the fire, you probably lost it while you were playing in the game.
Tim, was their football equipment must have been on the train then? They didn't take it into the hotel?
I went back and looked in the articles, and I didn't see anything about their equipment. So I assumed that their equipment was largely on the train.
Okay.
At least their, the gear, their game gear. They probably worked out, but just did it in like shorts and t-shirts or something like that, when they were in Missoula. But anyways, they made it to Seattle like the following day, and played a game. They ended up winning. They won like 14-7. So, and then even stuff like, Jostens, which at least at the time was a Minnesota company, and they were the ones that had made all those charms. They said, okay, hey, we'll redo all the charms for everybody that lost them. So, the guys were able to get those things back. And then the team ended up going on. They actually finished second in the Big Ten to Northwestern, but they were the national champions that year. So, anyway, it's just one of those crazy things. You just imagine, a team experiencing a fire like that, right? And basically losing everything. They basically had the clothes on their rack, and that's it. So some guys were in pajamas, some guys, sweatsuits or whatever they had. So anyways, just they're obviously fortunate that no one was injured, at least seriously. And so, but just kind of a crazy story.
Yeah, still, you would think, just to have some of the trauma of having that, a near miss really to the whole team, that and then they're still traveling, going and playing a game a couple of days later, and then they got to travel all the way back across the country and have their stuff stolen and go through all that and to still play that well. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and they were guys playing for Minnesota, so they wouldn't have had any books with them.
Yeah.
That's the Wisconsin.
Oh boy! It says that by a Wisconsin guy. That's I'm sure you'll get some letters for that.
Maybe one of the guys had a book.
Okay, maybe one of them.
Yeah, the smart guy on the team had a book.
And he did. He gave the cliff notes to everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Tim, that is really pretty cool that you go back and you find this story that I know hear a lot of college football stories all the time, and I did not know that story until I read your tidbit. And but you do this all the time, finding these things that are buried through history, and maybe you could share with folks where they can enjoy some of these.
Yeah, just go to footballarchaeology.com. It's a Substack site, so you can subscribe there, and if you subscribe, you'll get an email every time that I send out a new story. Otherwise, you can follow on Substack, which means, you kind of get put in the queue, just like on, Twitter or Facebook or anything like that. And yeah, that's about it. So come and check it out whenever you want to.
All right. Well, Tim, we really appreciate you coming here and sharing this story. And we would love to have you investigate and research another story and come back next week and share it with us.
I'll do my best.